Regent Sounds was set up originally by Ralph Ellman, who was a big band leader, and he worked in the offices over. He had his office over on Denmark Street, and he set up Regent Sounds as a studio where he could bring his guys and record demos and go straight to acetate. So if a song came to him, he could just quickly do a recording of it. All of the publishers that moved here throughout the 20s and 30s and 40s loved the idea of having a studio where they could actually have an acetate pressed of things, so they started using it for that. So there was a group of musicians who'd come in and record stuff, and that's how it became a really popular studio. As that moved into the sort of early 60s, you had a lot of young sort of bands coming along who, like the Rolling Stones and the Kinks and the who discovered that it was a great little studio for doing demos. So they first started to come here, and word started to spread really that it was a great place where you could go and you could keep control of your songwrites. You know, because a lot of, if you started to record with Decca, let's say, or EMI, they would have the rights to your material if you used their studios. So by coming here, they could do a demo and hear how things sounded, and if they liked a track, they'd actually have control over it rather than working with an in-house producer. So once the Stones recorded here in '64 and they did their whole debut album here, it sort of was a bit like a sort of prairie fire really. Everybody kind of then jumped on the bandwagon. You had, you know, all the bands wanted to come here because obviously the Stones then sort of became more and more epic. Stones actually came back and did most of the second album here as well, and a lot of demos and outtakes. And then after that you had all of the other sort of bands, like the Kinks did all their demos here, the Tremolos, the Who did half of the album, A Quick One While He's Away, they did that here just in this little bit of this room. Then you had all those 60s bands, the Amen Corner, all of them here. Hendrix most famously, of course. Jimi Hendrix came in and did some demos here, and basically he liked it so much, he loved the sound, but the guys from the Labour Exchange next door came around and complained because he was playing so loud and he had to stop. So he basically didn't do much more recording here, which is a shame because he got some demo tracks down, he did a few rehearsals, so that was pretty cool. But as time went on, then it went into a big variety of different music. You had like Cat Stevens recording here, you had John Martin doing his first two records here, and then quite famously in 1970 you had Black Sabbath record their first two records here. So Paranoid, which is probably the most famous song recorded in this room, was recorded right here. And done in just a couple of hours, which is pretty amazing. It's one of the most recognisable songs in the world. So, you know, you then went on. There were other rumours that the Trogs recorded Wild Thing in here. I'm still trying to check that one out, really. But there are a lot of other songs that were recorded here, like the original demo for It's Not Unusual. Tom Jones did that here, and a whole handful of others. As time moved on, the studios got more and more advanced. They opened a second studio up Tottenham Court Road, and bands like the Bee Gees and stuff like that recorded there, and Genesis did their first two records there. But, you know, studios progressed and you started to get things like Abbey Road and Olympic Studios, and they were much better studios, much bigger, much more advanced technologically. So slowly bands were like, well, it's just a bit old hat, and it sort of fell out of favour really. And so by the very early 80s it was kind of wound up, and they closed the studio. There was then a period where it was at Publishers for a little while, then a couple of other small things, and then it turned into a music bookshop, which was called Helter Skelter, and that ran here for about 5 years, very popular, but unfortunately they couldn't sustain living in the West End. And then it turned into a guitar shop 10 years ago, and I started working here then, and we ran it for many years, and it became specialised. What we wanted to do was make a shop that was sort of specialising in Fender, and that's what happened. That's what my old bosses came up with the idea and did that. Then about 4.5 years ago, my colleague and I took it over in a partnership, and we've run it ever since. And we've done what we wanted to do all along, which was specialise in sort of key brands like Fender and Gretsch, and do a good job of sort of representing their range, because it's a very big range. And that's what we do basically. You know, we specialise in all of that.